Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Natalia Leigh. I'm an indie author and the managing editor at Enchanted Ink Publishing, and today I'm going to take you step by step through my process of outlining romance novels. Now, I already have an outlining video. It is a couple years old, but I do have an outlining video that's more generalized. It's not specific to romance. So if you don't write in the romance genre, you can check out that other outlining video. It will be linked down below because this is very specific to the romance genre. In case you're new here or you just haven't caught up with all of my recent videos, I have been writing and publishing spicy romance books under a pen name. If you have not seen my pen name video and why I opted to write under a pen name, I will have that link down below and you can check it out. It could also be helpful if you are starting out in romance and you don't know if you want to write under a pen name or not. So you can find that down there too. My first book came out in October. My second book came out in March. My third is coming out in June, and then my fourth romance book will be out in July. I think late July or very early August. Now, with all of that being said, I have outlined, we're talking about outlining specifically, so I have outlined 7 romance novels in the past year and a half, I want to say, and through the process of outlining those 7 novels, I have finally come up with a process that works really well for me. So with this method, I have finally gotten to a place where the last 2 novels I have written have needed very little in way of developmental revision because I spend so much time in the outlining process and I understand my story so deeply that by the time I get to the first draft and I write the first draft, there aren't major plot holes, there aren't a bunch of problems that need fixing. Granted, this could also come from the fact that I'm working on something like my 10th or 11th novel at this point, so I've definitely had practice. But I think with this outlining method, you can definitely fully structure your book in a way that allows you to get it all there on paper in the right order in the very first draft. And for me, that's really sped up the writing and publishing process, especially the publishing process, because if I don't have to spend 2 months doing developmental revisions, let's say I can cut that back to 2 weeks, I have now cut 6 weeks out of my publishing timeline and I can publish more books even faster. So that is the little introduction. I have a ton of reference materials. I am going to link all of these down below, so if you don't have these reference books and you want to pick them up, they will be down there. The other thing is that I am not going to break down these reference materials into the beats that they provide because I feel like that wouldn't be respectful of the authors. So while I will be referencing these books and talking about them, I'm not gonna like hand out a printable sheet because again, I just feel like as an author, that is really kind of shady to do to another author. So if you want to pick up these books, you will find them all linked down below. Let's get started. All right, so I have, how many reference books here? 5, 6. I have 6 reference books here. The first 2 are 7 Figure Fiction and the Universal Fantasy List. These are both by T. Taylor. We will talk about these. I have, of course, this probably won't sound surprising to anyone, Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes. This has changed my romance outlining life. I love this book. I have the tried and true Save the Cat Writes novel. This is great for any novelist, regardless of genre. And then I also have these 2 big guys. I have volumes 1 and 2 of the Conflict Thesaurus. So these are the reference materials I'm going to be talking about, and let's go ahead and dive into the actual process. All right, so step 1 in my outlining process is probably the most fun. It's the step that I like the most, and that is brainstorming and starting to put together a playlist. So I have this sketchbook. I have had this for probably close to a decade at this point, and I have outlined and or at least done brainstorms for almost every single one of my books in this sketchbook. I have Pistol Daisy in here. I have all my romance books in here. I have Song of the Dryad in here. I just have so many. So grab yourself some sort of notebook or sketchbook, what have you, and just start brainstorming. I typically get ideas for novels in random places. Might be from a song, might be from a movie that I'm watching, it might be from something I just see when I'm out and about. It can just come from anywhere. So I take that little kernel of an idea, that little bit of excitement, and I start brainstorming. And this is the part of the process where I love starting my playlist as well. I am very much a writer who relies on kind of like the emotional vibes to really commit myself to a story. So if I have a playlist that's just overflowing with music that gets me in the mood for the story, maybe with music that allows me to picture different scenes in the novel and how they're going to play out, that helps me a lot. So I will sit down, sketchbook, and a pen. I will put on some music, Pandora, YouTube, whatever, Spotify, and I will just jot as many ideas down as possible. I love this stage. It is so much fun, and there is absolutely no pressure. So sometimes I'll spend one night doing that, and I feel like I have enough content and enough ideas to start putting them together into an outline. Sometimes it takes me a week or two, or even longer, especially if I'm working on a different project at the time. But however much time it takes, just do that, brainstorm, listen to your playlist until you feel like you have enough content to start breaking them down, all of those ideas for scenes, into beats. All right, so after I have done a good amount of brainstorming and developing a playlist, I then move into trying to determine the wants and needs and also the main like internal emotional wound for my male and female leads. And this is something that I used to not think was that important, I'll be completely honest. Sometimes I felt it was unnecessary, I guess we'll say that. And I just felt like, oh, I can just write these books and, you know, maybe their emotional wound will reveal itself to me, or maybe their wants and needs will reveal themselves to me. And I finally realized that that usually doesn't happen, at least for me. So I really need to get it figured out in the outlining phase. And I have found with these past few outlines, and especially I'm about to start working on the copy edit for the contemporary romance that I just wrote. I've been talking about that in my previous vlogs if you want to go watch them. That contemporary romance that I wrote might be my favorite book I've ever written. Daisy from my Pistol Daisy series is still my favorite character I've ever written, but that contemporary romance came together so well. And it made me so excited to write it, so excited to read back over and edit it. And I really attribute that to this outlining method and to taking the time before I started writing to determine my characters' wants/needs and also their emotional wounds. So that is really important. And these two books, if you're not really sure what that means, you can always Google, you know, emotional wounds in characters or wants and needs for characters. But these two books, Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes and Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody, both of these really go into it in different ways. And I have gained insight into that emotional development of my characters from both of these books. So I would highly, highly recommend picking up both of these if you are a romance writer. So that is the next step, is determining early on the wants and needs and main wound of your two main characters, because we want to try to fix that wound. We want to try to heal that wound. And as Gwen Hayes puts it, you want to take your characters from having a hole in their heart, wholehearted, H-O-L-E, at the beginning of the book, to wholehearted, W-H-O-L-E. So essentially you fill in that hole in their heart with love. It sounds cheesy, but it really works for my brain. So again, try these two books if you want to learn more about that. moving on to step number 3. All right, so step number 3 in my outlining process is to look back at all of the ideas, all the brainstorming I did, and start to develop the main beats of the novel. Now, I use the one thing that I use that I don't have an actual book, like the one reference I use, is the 27, it's a 27 chapter structure. So 3 act, 9 block, 27 chapter structure. I can link that down below. That's kind of like a public one, so I will link that down there. So when I'm outlining, I'm using that 27 chapter structure. That's kind of the overarching structure of my outline, is 27 chapters and then usually an epilogue to show the characters after some time has passed at the end of the story. But when it comes to the major beats of the novel within that 27 chapter structure, once again, I use Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and I also use Romancing the Beat. So some of the main beats that tend to be easy for me to figure out kind of right off the bat are the introduction of the heroine and the hero, the meet cute, when the romantic leads meet for the first time, the inciting incident. Sometimes the meet cute is not the inciting incident. My inciting incidents tend to be something totally different, and the inciting incident is what pushes the characters together into the meet cute, or that is how my books have gone thus far. So those beats are all in Act 1, and Act 1 tends to be pretty easy to outline, for me at least. It's when we get into Acts 2, 3, and 4, and I do use a 4-act structure. It is broken down for you in Romancing the Beat. That's how I kind of decided and opted to start using the 4-act structure, so it's in this book. The midpoint is something that I plot early on because that tends to be when the romance between the characters really escalates, is going to be there at that midpoint. Again, something that Gwen Hayes talks about. And then from there, I usually have, 4, 5, 6, whatever, main beats plotted out. And those are the beats that the rest of the story is going to hinge around. So if you have, maybe you have some scenes in your mind and you're thinking, I know I want, maybe you're writing like a clean and wholesome high school romance. Like, okay, I know I want a scene on the track field, or I know I want a scene at the homecoming dance. Like, those could be beats that you put in your outline early on to make sure that the rest of the story can hinge around them, and to also make sure that they're playing an imperative role in the manuscript, because you don't want any scenes that are completely irrelevant and could be thrown out and the story wouldn't suffer for it. All right, step number 4. This is where the outline starts to slow down for me, and I have to kind of dig a little bit deeper to start filling in all those other beats. And I usually get stuck. I can usually get quite a few of the big beats figured out, and then I start tripping up, usually in Acts 2 and 3. When I'm getting tripped up and stuck, that's when I start turning to books like these. That is when I start turning to things that can give me more creative ideas versus more of like structural guidance. So whether you write clean and wholesome romance, or maybe you write spicy romance like I do, these 2 books by T. Taylor, I highly, highly suggest. They do have a lot of spicy elements in them. So as long as you're not uncomfortable reading about that, these books would be fantastic, because this has helped me really start to understand tropes in the romance genre. I used to think tropes were like a negative cliche thing. Now I love them. And I love them because tropes help me to write books that the right readers are going to enjoy. So if I am writing a wolf shifter romance, there are certain tropes that the readers of that genre typically really like seeing in their books. And it's not a cheap thing. It's not like a gross cliche thing to do. So I have totally turned my brain around regarding tropes. Universal fantasies. things that readers love to read. And of course, a universal fantasy doesn't literally mean that everybody universally is going to enjoy that thing, but it means that the right readers eat it up, right? They really, really love it, and you can use it to your advantage in your marketing copy. So really, really highly suggest you pick these two up. They're gonna be linked down below. And then these 2 volumes of the Conflict Thesaurus, I actually just recently picked up. I think I've had these for, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks, and I have used them. I've been using them on my 2 recent outlines, and they really come in handy for me because I've always struggled with conflict in my books. It has been one of the biggest hurdles for me to overcome as a writer and as a storyteller. And these, oh my gosh, these really come in handy because let's say I have all my brainstorming and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, man, I really need 2 more big conflicts to help push these characters forward in their arcs. Well, you can grab the Conflict Thesaurus, and what I do is I literally just go to the table of contents and they have a bunch of conflicts, potential conflicts listed out for you. So let's go ahead and jump to one. A romantic competitor entering the scene. So you have the conflict itself, and then it breaks it down into examples, minor and major complications, resulting emotions, internal struggles, negative traits, impact on basic needs, positive traits, and positive outcomes. So it really breaks down the conflict for you, and this has helped me so much in terms of, you know, reading through the table of contents and saying, perfect. That conflict will fit in this book. It's going to fit with my tropes. It's going to do exactly what I need to push my characters forward on their emotional, both internal and external plot paths. And that is why I highly recommend these books. I also have the Emotion Thesaurus, and these authors have a bunch of different reference books that you can pick up, and I have enjoyed all of them. So highly recommend these as well. Now, using, you know, these 4 reference books usually helps me in terms of getting the rest of my chapters all plotted out. And that is step number 5, is slowly working your way through all of the gaps. And this can take a little bit of time. Maybe it takes you weeks, maybe it takes you a couple months. Maybe you even decide to get started on your first draft just to see if that gets ideas flowing. But just taking your time, continue brainstorming. I can always go back to step number 1 if I get stuck, turn on the playlist and try to get more ideas. And I do find reading helpful. However, I'm one of those writers who never reads in the genre that I am currently writing. I don't like to be negatively influenced by any other authors, and what I mean when I say that is I don't want to read books by other really popular authors and feel pressured into doing exactly what they're doing, or, you know, feeling nervous that, oh my gosh, a lot of my plot beats are actually the same as this other author, or any of those feelings. So generally, I avoid reading in the same genre when I'm writing it. Not all authors have that problem though. So if that's something that wouldn't bother you, you could certainly try that in terms of kind of getting the ideas flowing as well. And that blends perfectly into step number 6, the final step that I go through when I'm outlining a novel, and that is writing that first draft and editing the outline as I go. Because I will often have my entire outline and then I'm working through the book and I get to a chapter and I think, you know, I need to change it up here, or I think I need to take this one big chapter and I need to break it down into 2, or I need a few different scenes here. And that's just a completely like normal, natural, and organic process. But as long as I have the story there and I have it outlined and I know what my goals and intentions are, I have very recently learned that I can tend to put together a pretty well-rounded and complete first draft. And like I said early on in this video, that really helps to have that kind of refined first draft when you're going into the developmental stage or stages of revision. I used to have to do multiple rounds of revision on my books. In both Song of the Dryad and in Pistol Daisy, I had some pretty significant structural problems. I had problems with the character arcs, especially in Song of the Dryad, and all of that came from me not yet having the skills to put together a fully functioning outline. So I had to do a lot of rounds of developmental revisions on these books, especially this one. I think I had already, I was almost ready to publish this book, and I realized, oh no, I have to revise it again because I found something that feels like such a weakness to me, and I had to go back and fix it. But since finding this new outlining method, developing this new outlining method, the past 2 books I have written, book 3 in my paranormal romance trilogy, which is going to be out in June, and then the first draft of my contemporary romance, which is going to come out in late July, those books didn't need much developmental revision. I did one pass and I felt really good about where they were. And as somebody who wants to be able to write quickly, to love and enjoy the stories I'm writing, and to be able to publish multiple books a year, that is something that is imperative to me. I have to be able to write a well-structured draft so that it doesn't take me months and months and months of editing to finally get it to a decent place where it can then enter line editing, enter copy editing, go into formatting. So this method has really, really helped me, and I hope it helps you as well. So like I said earlier, I will have all of the reference material linked down below. I'm also going to link that 3-act, 9-block, 27 structure outline, because again, that is more of a public one. You don't have to buy that, so that'll be linked down there. But if you have any questions about literally any of these reference books, any questions about how I outline my outlining process, anything like that, please feel free to leave them down below. I really hope this helped you romance writers out there. If you are interested in editing, cover design, or formatting services, you can come check us out at enchantedinkpublishing.com, and we would love to work with you. All right, that is all I have for today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.